And get started. Welcome everybody. We are so pleased that you're able to join us this evening. I'm Simba Blood, Natural Resources Technician at the Ramsey-Washington Metro Watershed District. I'm also the staff liaison to our volunteer Landscape Ecology Awards program and Environmental Forum team. So we've partnered with many of the folks who are attending tonight, but for those of you who may not be as familiar with our work, RWMWD is a local unit of government, and we're responsible for preserving and improving water resources and related ecosystems in the eastern Twin Cities, Minnesota metro area. We're different than many other governmental groups in that our district follows water flow lines rather than political boundaries. Our district covers 65 square miles and includes parts of 12 cities in both Ramsey and Washington counties, hence the very long name. In addition to exciting educational events such as this evening's program, our work includes installing large stormwater projects such as treatment ponds and infiltration basins, working with cities on flood risk mitigation. We monitor lakes and streams. We inspect construction sites for erosion and sediment control. And we do planting and maintaining of buffers along our public waters. One program I want to be sure to mention this evening is our Stewardship grant program. We offer cost share grants to property owners within our district for projects that help to retain and clean rainwater on their property. So homeowners, businesses, churches, other properties are all eligible for assistance, which includes help with planning as well as paying for a project. Details about this program and all of our other work can be found on our website, as you see on our screen there. Next slide, Deanna. All right. I also want to highlight Waterfest. That's another event we sponsor. As in previous years, Waterfest will be held at Lake Phalen Regional Park this year, but in a reimagined format. Instead of doing it in a single Saturday afternoon, we're spreading the celebration out over the week of June 12th through 27th. So due to the COVID safety measures, this event will showcase numerous self-directed learning opportunities and activities throughout the week. In addition, the Waterfest webpage will feature virtual activities shared by our exhibitors. Volunteers will be assisting with the self-directed exhibits, and we're looking for additional volunteers, so please sign up if that is something that interests you. Even though Waterfest will look much different than previous years, the goal remains to continue educating all people on the importance of water management, wildlife habitat, and the unique ecological features of our region's watershed. We're still in the planning stages, so more information will be coming to our website soon. And with that, I will turn things over to Dana Larson Ramsey, who's co-chair of the LEAP and Environmental Forum team.
All right, thank you, Simba. Good evening, everyone. We're very excited to have you as part of our event tonight. And I want to start out with thanking our Landscape Ecology Awards program and Environmental Forum team. You see pictured here, we have 9 awesome volunteers who have done a great job for many years putting together various programs, including tonight's program. So I'd like to thank our co-chair Mark, I'm sorry, Mark, I can't talk today, Gail, Anita, Jan, Scott, Phyllis, Roxanne, and Missy. And thanks to our awesome liaison from the watershed, Simba Blood, and a shout out to Lauren Hazenson, their communications coordinator, for helping us with the advertising for tonight. I serve on a number of watershed district teams, but professionally I'm the director of Willow Lake Nature Preserve for H.B. Fuller Company. We typically host this program at our site. You can see our building there. If you look really carefully, you might see me in the window there. But professionally, like I said, I direct the preserve. Our site is a beautiful 285-acre nature preserve and corporate campus. I put up a few pictures of spring so you can see what's going on in our nature preserve. It's not open to public, but it is home to nearly 230 species of wildlife and more than 435 species of plants. So before we get started tonight with the Environmental Forum, a mountain lion story featuring William Stolzenburg, I want to thank Tim Manthe. He's one of our IT managers, and Tim is kindly hosting our event tonight. And we're really happy to have him helping host our webinar. So Just a little technical thing here. Will, this is the first time on that picture, so you don't want to switch to you yet. So I'm going to go back. Okay, no problem. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. It's a new experience. We've never done a virtual environmental forum team, so that's why we're really glad to have Tim, because he's volunteering his time and his talents. So thank you very much. A couple things about tonight's environmental forum. We would ask people to hold your questions till the very end, and then Tim and I will give you instructions. You can either type in a question or raise your hand and ask a question verbally. So we appreciate your cooperation with that. Tonight, we're really excited to have Will Stolzenburg. He's a wildlife conservation biologist turned author and speaker. He has always gravitated towards predators, and his journey has led him to uncover the critical role that these topmost predators play in ecosystems. Will has written 4 books. 3 of them are about predators: Where the Wild Things Were, Rat Island, and Heart of a Lion, which is highly featured tonight. He is a Discover Great New Writers designee by Barnes & Noble, the recipient of an Alicia Patterson Journalism Fellowship, and a professional speaker. He has both passion and compassion for animals, and writes about animals because he finds them wondrous, good for the soul, and because they deserve a voice. Will's incredible chronicling of the 2-year journey of a young mountain lion all across America with well-documented stops in the Twin Cities made this cat a local legend. I first learned about this mountain lion when it was caught on video on dash cam by a police officer in Champlin, Minnesota on December 5th, 2009. Champlin is, oops, it's auto changing on me, sorry about that. Champlin is about 25 miles northwest of my site. That day I was hiking our nature preserve with a brand new manager on December 9th, sorry, and got an auto change here that didn't show up in my program before, so I apologize for that. Hiking on December 9th with our manager, and it was really, really quiet and kind of eerie out there. I thought, this is really strange. We aren't seeing any animals at all. And the very next day, our neighbor who lives up above our nature preserve, a former employee, called me on the phone. His St. Bernards have been going crazy, barking, barking, barking. He and his wife walked to the window and saw, this is super irritating, I apologize, and saw a mountain lion walk right by their patio window. So, so John and I, my colleague and I went up and looked, and sure enough, there were the tracks of this large animal. So I called the DNR and was eventually connected with Dan Stark, who is their large carnivore biologist. Dan met me that afternoon, and the 2 of us and our neighbor went out and we followed the tracks. You can see Dan here standing by the neighbor's doorway. When it was getting dark, we had just come upon a urine spot, and we had noticed that there were 2 sets of tracks in and 1 out, and we all 3 looked kind of in the trees. The mountain lion was not in the trees, but we also decided we were getting too low of light, so it's a little hard to see what we were doing. So we decided we'd convene 2 days later on Saturday. Dan arrived that morning with 2-year-old daughter Lily on his backpack. I was jokingly said to him, "Is that your cougar bait?" And then we went off on our adventure, and it was really quite an adventure. Dan and I were joined with my colleague here at work, Kelly Roosevelt, as we went out and explored the site. Here we are collecting a scat sample that went out to the Montana for testing. Also with us, my husband Scott joined us, and we followed the tracks as it went all the way around our site. We found a yearling, this is irritating. We found a yearling carcass of a deer that the mountain lion had eaten, and we found, as well, we found a number of different scat samples and so forth. We were really impressed with the very, very big leaps and bounds and the sizes of the tracks as we went around the site. Finally, the cat crossed the lake here and went all the way over to our east side, so it pretty much spent time all around our whole nature preserve, even going underneath our wildlife observation gazebos. And then here's Kelly standing by the fence where the cat jumped the fence and left our site via Highway 61. You can see there in the background, heading off to the east. It was the talk of our company then, and for people for those of us that were here at that time, it still is. So now fast forward to February 17th, 2014. I got a call from our front desk and they said, there's an author here that wants to talk to you about the mountain lion. And so I cleared my schedule, and that is how I met Will Stolzenburg. I spent several hours talking with him that day, and all about that famous mountain lion visit. And then the next day he returned, and the two of us followed the pathway of the mountain lion through our site and sharing the stories and all the adventure and excitement. The snow was all the way up to my thighs, so we had snowshoes on, but it was a day-long journey of remembering a really exciting event. So I've been waiting a very long time for tonight's opportunity since that day when Will and I first met. And I'm really excited that Will is joining us tonight from Southwest Florida. Welcome, Will.
So that's my cue, huh? Okay.
That's your cue.
And we're not getting any action on my slides here, so. Let's try this. There we go. Okay. So, yeah, thanks very much. And Dana, yeah, that was a great day in the field. One of the highlights of my life, certainly. I just want to start in really quick, Dan, because this is a story. This is one of those incredible journey stories, and this one takes nearly 2 years, which, by the way, is way past my bedtime. So I'm going to cut to the chase, and I'm going to introduce you immediately to our hero. This is a representative of who we're going to be talking about, honoring tonight. This is Puma concolor, the cat of a single color. It's the second largest cat in the Americas, next to the jaguar, 75 to 200 pounds. Very athletic cat. Look at the big hind legs there. Propel at 40 feet in a bound, 15 feet straight up, if you can believe this picture. It's an ambush predator. This is an animal that leaps from cover, springing from the edge of woods and boulder outcrops, and it dispatches its prey with a bite to the neck or a stranglehold on the throat. It is the reigning giant killer among all of the world's big cats. This animal is capable of taking down prey all the way from mice to moose, which makes it a very adaptable and versatile predator. Now, this is the widest range of any mammal that we know in the Western Hemisphere, and it occurs all the way from boreal forests of northern of the American Southwest, from 19,000-foot alpine tundra in the Chilean Andes to the jungles of the Amazon basin. So what you see here, this entire shaded region of this map represents the former range of this species. Now, the red represents the current range of this species. And if you look at the orange, you're going to notice very immediately that 2/3 of the United States is lacking lions, which begs the question, well, what happened? Well, for starters, we happened. You know, this about 400 or 500 years ago, when our ancestors, for many of us anyway, I apologize to the Native Americans and other folks out there, but for many of us, the coming of the European colonists 400 years ago was the becoming of an ideal or a myth about these big predators, in particular about panthers as demonic and as something to be vanquished. So as the Euro-American culture swept westward, they swept the American lion along with them. There were basically three forces that drove America's lion from the landscape. Number one, our settlers, they clear-cut the forest. They eliminated the cover. They all but eliminated the lion's predominant prey, which was the white-tailed deer in these neck of the woods. And number three, they assaulted the lion directly with a vehemence. In the late 1800s, early 1900s, the mountain lion was caught up in this nationwide assault on America's predators. Now, and this is also a time when the citizens themselves were encouraged to take part in the slaughter. They put bounties on the heads of these animals. There was even a government program called the U.S. Department of Predator and Rodent Control, and their mission was to annihilate these undesirable vermin from the American landscape, which today this department is still in operation under the Orwellian euphemism of Wildlife Services. So basically by the early 1900s, they had all but vanquished the wolf from the lower 48. The grizzly bear was gone from all but a few rock and ice holdouts in the northern Rockies, and the mountain lion was was left in the most inhospitable reaches of the Mountain West. So here we're looking at a map of hundreds. The American mountain lion, as I said, has essentially been eradicated from the eastern 2/3 of America, except for if you look down in the lower right-hand corner there, about 5 miles from where I live now, one little colony of about a dozen Florida panthers. By the way, panthers, same animal as our lion, catamount, goes by many names, puma. These are left just a dozen or so in the cypress swamps of southern Florida. The line that you see, the vertical line that you see running down the left-hand third, that is basically the eastern edge of the Rocky Mountains. And that is where the mountain lion population ends at that point. But now something's going to happen in the 1970s. Note up there again on that line, this new oval that has appeared. That little colony right there, that little outlier of the Rocky Mountains is going to become very important. That little island happens to be the Black Hills of South Dakota, which for many of us immediately conjures, of course, images of Mount Rushmore. But for the purposes of this story, think of this as like the ground zero for the future of mountain lions east of this line. So here's a quick of the Black Hills lions. Now, they, along with all the other eastern lions, were eradicated by the predator killing campaigns of the 1900s. But in the 1970s, remember that little gap between the oval and the eastern edge of the Rockies there, a few pioneers crossed that gap, met each other in the Black Hills, got together, made some little babies, and started their own colony in the Black Hills. Now, about this time, the South Dakota legislature realizes, hey, we have mountain lions once again. And so what they did, they abandoned their bounty on the mountain lions. They declared them endangered animals to be protected under law. But very soon, ranchers and hunters started raising their voices. There was talk of imminent plunder and danger. They were talking about mountain lions running hither and yon. It was a matter of time before all of their deer were gone, all of their sheep were gone, and before the children were being plucked off the streets of Rapid City. And so in 2005, the South Dakota Game, Fish, and Parks Department decided that they were going to start holding a yearly hunt. And every year thereafter, for the next few years, they had these hunts and they raised the quota with each year. Now, at the same time, the Game Department and the South Dakota State University began a series of studies of the Black Hills lions. They started capturing and tranquilizing them and fitting these lions with radio collars and following them around in their daily lives through the hills. Now, for the most part, what the studies confirmed was what had already been determined in many other studies throughout the mountain lion's range. But one of the key confirmations about this study, which is going to play a very important role in the story of our mountain lion, was the mountain lion's sense of territory. Now, these mountain lions, they divvied up the Black Hills amongst themselves by means of territories. And the adult males in particular, they had these huge home ranges, some of them covering as much as 300 square miles in their yearly wanderings. Now, the females, they roamed about a quarter as far, and it was the male's strategy to try to gather maybe 2 to 4 different female territories within his own and make the rounds every year and go and meet with the ladies every so often and then produce little kittens. And there you go. This is his means of making a living and immortalizing his genes. Now, you can imagine that these territories are very, very valuable for these male lions. And when two of them meet on contested ground, there is often savage combat, if not infrequently death from these two dominant males. So this is how the Black Hills lions partitioned the Black Hills amongst themselves. And this is the way, again, this is how mountain lion society is run just about every place that they've been studied, which the message here is that all this amounts to, it's a very strictly patrolled, self-policed population of mountain lions. There's no hunting necessary. They do all the policing themselves, okay? So all of this, these facts that their own program is finding out about mountain lions, it flies in stark contradiction to these hysterical voices that imagine these mountain lions multiplying like rabbits and sweeping the countryside like plagues. The science was unequivocal. This is just not how mountain lion society works. Now, this mountain lion territorial society, that leads to a very interesting dilemma for the young male lions when they come of age in the Black Hills. Now, a little over a year old, most male mountain lions, they come of age. They become adolescents. They become In some cases, people like to call them juvenile delinquents. But in any case, this is the age when they decide they want to set out on their own. They separate from their mother and their siblings. They either leave on their own, they get kicked out, and they start looking for their own territory. Now, when they do, they almost invariably, they head for some other colony. Because if they stay, they're going to have to fight for their territory. And if they have to fight for something where they are, who are they going to end up fighting? They're usually going to end up fighting their father, okay? And who is it they're going to be fighting? It's an animal that's usually an older, stronger, more savvy animal that's very likely to kick their butt, if not kill them outright. So what they do is they head for the far horizon where there's maybe an opening in there. Now, there's another reason for leaving their home territory, and that is, what if they were to say win the territory, to defeat the overlord? Who is their most likely mate going to be? Well, it's going to be mom, it's going to be his sisters. And this is not a long-term strategy for genetic health. So they head for the far horizon. And this is where it gets interesting, especially in the Black Hills. Now, if you're in the Black Hills, and that the little dark blob there in the center, that is the Black Hills. To the left of that is the Wyoming Rockies. Now, if you are a mountain lion, young male mountain lion deciding that it's time to leave, and you head west, you've got about a 90 or 100 mile gap until you find some prime mountain lion habitat. On the other hand, if you're the mountain lion that likes to say, well, let's try the other direction. If you're looking east from the Black Hills, this is what you're looking at here. This is what I like to think of, or not really like to think of, but inescapable. This is a mountain lion abyss, and this is what our hero is going to attempt here. So we can imagine that in the very last days when our hero has decided that it's time for him to leave. And by the way, nobody has seen this cat yet. This isn't one of those cats that was collared and was tracked around, and we have any sort of indication of who he is. Nobody knows about this animal at this point. We're going to learn about him on the way. But this is what we suspect might have been one of his last moments in the Black Hills. He's looking out east over this landscape right now. He's getting ready to leave. And now, what he's looking at here when he decides to head east is basically prairie. This is the midgrass prairie of South Dakota. And what he doesn't realize is that this isn't a 90 or 100 mile gap between him and the next prime habitat. This prairie stretches for 500 miles. And so he sets out one night, late summer, early September 2009, and this is the sort of land that he is traversing. For the next 500 miles, he's going to be walking through this. We're talking cornfields, we're talking sunflower fields, we're talking prairie. And remember, also, in the plains of South Dakota, it is open season on mountain lions year round. I forgot to mention that earlier, but when they opened the Black Hills to hunting, to a seasonal hunting, they opened the entire eastern state to year-round hunting of mountain lions, where if you're a mountain lion traversing this territory, the standard practice is for anybody seeing you, if you see a lion, you shoot it. And it's only going to get worse. Because remember, our mountain lion is leaving late September, maybe, is heading into, he's not only heading into the prairie, he's heading into winter. And very soon, this habitat begins to look like this. Now imagine you're a 100-pound animal trying to traverse this landscape, not only trying to seek cover, trying to feed yourself, but you've got people out there, if they see you, they're going to come running with dogs and guns, okay? This is what our animal is doing. This is what he's doing. He's traveling across this landscape. What we think he's doing is he is holding it by day. He's finding a culvert, someplace, a little copse of trees. He is feeding himself on the fly. He's maybe finding a deer in a creek bed somewhere. He's finding a rock pile, porcupine, or an occasional barn cat or a jackrabbit, but he's eating on the go. And this is all new territory to him. Most impressive. Somehow, of course, this story's can't end here. He survives. He survives the Great Plains crossing, and by December of 2009, this animal, let's call him Walker. Walker has put the Black Hills and more than 500 miles of prairie and cropland behind him. By December, he is coming into a new land. He's coming into a land of thickening woods and more people. Now we're on the morning of December 5, 2009. It is 2 hours before dawn, but this is what it looks like during the day when Walker comes to this intersection in the town of Champlin, Minnesota. For all of you Twin City people out there, maybe some folks even live in Champlin, but here it is. You may even recognize this intersection. Again, it's 2 hours before dawn, it's dark, and at the time, these two officers, Bob Penny and Jeff Martin of the Champlin, Minnesota Police Department, they're finishing up another long night on what they call the dog watch shift, okay? They're returning to their cars after responding to a call of domestic violence in some apartment complex just out of sight here, when Martin looks at this intersection and he sees what he thinks is a big Labrador retriever heading across this intersection. Right as he spots this animal, this car comes screaming up, and brakes smoking, and just about creams this animal right in the intersection. The animal, nonplussed, just keeps walking right ahead. But he gets a good look at it in the headlights, and now he realizes what he's seen. He nudges his partner, Officer Penny, and says, "Hey, I just saw a mountain lion cross the road." Penny looks at him and says, "You've been working too many night shifts." But anyway, Penny says, "All right, let's humor you." The two of them get back in their squad cars. They head down this road that you see heading straight away. And Officer Martin turns on his dash cam. And this is what we see.
Yeah, that's gonna come out right here. Right here, right across the road. Right in the middle of the road. Looks like a mountain lion there. Looks like.
Well, as you can imagine, next day that video goes viral. So the officials of the Division of Natural Resources, they confirmed the video subject as none other than a mountain lion, a verified mountain lion. They exuberantly overestimate its weight at a whopping 200 pounds. At the same time, many of you out there in the Twin Cities, you probably remember this time. The viewers of the evening news in the Twin Cities are tuning in to Martin and Penny's video. The people across the country, remember, it's the age of the internet. They're replaying this clip on the internet. The Champlin lion, they're calling it now, is now the talk of the Twin Cities. So the immediate suspicions are that they can't imagine where this animal might have come from. They imagine that it's somebody's pet gone loose. But there are others who are wondering other things at this time. 1,000 miles east, we are talking about a village in the Shawangunk Mountains of southern New York State. A fellow by the name of Chris Spatz is now watching this cat very closely. Spatz is a president of the Eastern Cougar Foundation. It's a small, feisty team of scientists and scholars, and they're dedicated to seeing the cougar reclaim its rightful place in the Americans' eastern forests, including the place where you can see in the background now where Chris lives. They are keenly interested in watching this particular animal on the off chance that it turns out to be something other than somebody's escaped pet. Now, they have a couple reasons for wishing this cat well, and one of them is this. This is a scene that has become commonplace over many of the eastern forests of the United States. In many forests of the East, most notably in places where forestry is still a major industry, the trees have been brought to a reproductive arrest. And this is happening from the northern woods of Wisconsin all the way to the Great Smoky Mountains of North Carolina, where the floral diversity of the forest is under siege. Plants are going missing, exotic weeds are spreading like wildfire, and in many places, the only thing preventing the left-hand side of this screen from becoming the right-hand side of this image is a fence. And the only thing this fence is defending against, and you've probably guessed this one already, is this. White-tailed deer. Botanists and forest ecologists are now believing that the plague of white-tailed deer is a more serious threat to the biological diversity of our eastern forests than climate change. And it's not only plants that they're hammering. They've been linked to the loss of songbirds. Not many people realize that a lot of our songbirds, they nest in shrubs, they nest on the ground even. And these are places that are the most hampered by too many deer. They're also part of the scene of this plague of Lyme disease. 30 to 150,000 cases of this are diagnosed every year. Now, mind you, they don't carry the ticks that actually have the pathogen that infects you. They are the parents of those ticks that end up on white-footed mice, and chipmunks are the ones that end up infecting us. If you don't care about disease, you don't care about the plants, don't care about the songbirds, this might get your attention, because this happens on average about a million to 1.5 million times each year, deer collisions with vehicles, and it kills 200 of us. There's another reason that they want the big predators back, because in the predator's absence, this is another phenomenon that is taking over in many places around the east. Besides deer, we now have abnormally high populations of raccoons, foxes, possums, and I want to show one more who is a particularly bad actor. And everyone, please don't hate me for this, but yeah, free-range and house cats are conservatively estimated to kill billions of small birds and mammals every year. And so one of the things they're thinking is that these animals, these top predators, are needed back in some of these ecosystems. Now, I'm not going to tell you that the sole reason for these destructive superabundances of deer and the mesopredators or mid-sized predators is not due solely to the lack of big predators such as wolves and cougars that would otherwise eat them. But I will tell you that you just don't find scenes like this in places where there is a healthy, functioning population of predators are allowed to flourish, okay? There are other factors that going into this, but one of the factors that we know is loss of top predators. And there's a whole a raft of studies that have been coming out ever since. You know, I did a book back in 2008 called Where the Wild Things Were, and it's all about this idea that I'm mentioning here. It's called a trophic cascade or an ecological cascade, whereby the loss or addition of a great predator greatly affects not only the prey beneath it, but the prey that the prey eats, the plants, if you will. It creates an ecological cascade reverberations, and in the case of our big predators, the loss of them equates to a loss of biodiversity in many cases. And this is what spats and the rewilders want back in their eastern forests. Now, here's another thing that worries our champions with regard to the mountain lion reestablishing itself in the east. Now, this is a map of cougar conformations. The shaded area on the left there, of course, is where cougars are known. That's basically the eastern edge of the Rockies. And there's a few satellite populations there, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, where those little blue dots, they're all coming from those satellite colonies there. And over the past 30 years, there have been hundreds of these cougars confirmed by sightings, tracks, pictures, video, body parts, carcasses, crossing the Midwest. Now, the problem with this is that journalists and lay people, they look at these maps and you would think that there is a great cougar comeback on the way, that, you know, the next year we're going to have them, they're going to have them denning in downtown New York, but that's not the case. The inconvenient truth about this map is that every one of these dots records an instance of a cougar. It doesn't necessarily mean that this was, every one of those is a different cougar. One cougar could leave 5 different of. The other thing it doesn't tell you is that none of these dots are known to have survived, okay? Not one of these dots has produced a kitten. Not one of these dots represents an act of mating or reproduction. These aren't colonists. This map is in fact a memorial of the dead. This is what's happened to these cougars that are trying to run the Midwest gauntlet. They're getting run over, they're getting shot. They're just suspiciously vanishing. None of them are known to survive. And this is the gauntlet that our walker is now facing as he's heading east. Well, just to confirm the point, this comes out in the Pioneer Press a couple of days after the Champlain Cougar comes through, okay? All they have to do is find this cat and he's immediately labeled and he's going to be killed. And so he's also going to start, Walker, he's going to start a trend here, and we're going to find him doing this several times. He's not waiting around for people to take shoot him as a precaution. He's already gone. 2 days after this cat is sighted in Champlain, got everyone's attention. There's another report of a mountain lion about 20 miles southeast in the town of Vadnais Heights. Apparently somebody, and we've already heard this story from Dana, somebody has seen a mountain lion run across their yard, and so this yard abuts an urban nature reserve called, again, we've seen this, the Willow Lake Nature Reserve. Willow Lake is an urban preserve, okay? These are 8-lane interstate beltways of the Twin Cities. The preserve's naturalist, who you met, Dana Larson Ramsey, she investigates. She goes out expecting anything but a mountain lion, but this is what she finds. This is obviously a cat track. Now it's about 4 inches across. It's pretty big, but you know, there's a lot of bobcats around too. Bobcats, if there was melting, this very well still could be a bobcat track, but keep one thing in mind about bobcat morphology. Bobcats have kind of bob tails, right? They are measured in inches. And at which point Dana comes across this picture. Now that sinuous curved line right there, that is a tail dragging. This fence is 4 feet tall and the space between those tracks is 6 feet. So call in the experts. Dan Stark, carnivore biologist from the Minnesota Division of Natural Resources, arrives that evening to join the search. He immediately finds this puddle of urine. They continue tracking, realize it's getting too dark. And guess what? Maybe somebody's got the drop on us. Let's continue this tomorrow. They come back and again, more gold. I call this gold, pseudobiologists. This is scat. This is what they find. And this is a big cougar scat full of deer hair. Dan, being the good biologist that he is, he packages this and the urine and he sends it to the National Genomics Lab in Missoula, Montana for analysis. There's the last tracks we have as the cougar has headed through the preserve, and that's the 6-foot fence that Dana showed you earlier right there. He's going to sail over the fence and head east, continuing east, ever east. Meanwhile, at the same time that Dan Stark is shining that flashlight on that puddle of urine, our animal Walker is already 10 miles east. He's in a town called Stillwater, Minnesota right now, and that river flowing to the east of Stillwater right there, just 2 miles away, that's the St. Croix River. That is the Wisconsin border. Our Walker has now crossed both South Dakota and Minnesota and is about to enter Wisconsin. But there are some doubts in the press. How's he gonna swim this mighty St. Croix River? Well, he's already answered that question. Another 6 days later, 32 air miles southeast on the morning of December 16th, there's a farmer out in the village of Spring Valley, Wisconsin. He's out riding his tractor through a foot of fresh snow when he comes upon, this is starting to look familiar, right? Guy's name is Barry Anderson. He takes a photo of this and sends it off to the Wisconsin now Division of Natural Resources. It's their turn to investigate. They bring the biologists out. Sure enough, there's tracks all over the place. But one of the biologists, Harvey Halverson, noticed these odd little balls, you know, and he said, what the heck are those? And all of a sudden he remembers, hey, that's the same thing that my dog brings in from playing in the snow. And he starts chewing these things from between his toes, you know? So he takes another close look at these balls and sure enough, there is hair attached to them. And again, being the good biologist, he packages those hairs, he sends them to the same lab that is now processing the scat from Vadnais Heights. These are the last tracks that we have of our cat in Spring Valley. You'll notice 2 sets of tracks there, the pancake-sized ones on the left. Those are our cougar, and very fittingly, they are melding with those of a white-tailed deer. And more to the point, they're both heading east. Okay, so this is what we have now just in the course of 11 days. We've got 4 sightings. We've got 60 miles of linear miles that our cat Walker has gone now. And included in just this time frame, in just this, we've got evidence of video and 2 samples of DNA for a cat that is not even collared. Amazing. Okay, here we go again. 3 days later, after leaving the tracks in Spring Valley, another 16 miles east, 5:32 p.m. at the edge of a cornfield outside of Downsville, Wisconsin, an automated trail camera goes off. The next morning, the farmer, name is Jason Weber, he finds this in his camera. So again, here come the authorities. Next day, the Wisconsin DNRs, they are accompanying Weber to this site. They look around, there's tracks all over the place, and there's this odd mound of corn stalks. They look a little closer, and they find this. It's the face of a young buck, white-tailed deer, his eyes glazed in a frozen stare. He's been partially eaten, and he's been half buried in this classical fashion of a lion's cache. The deer, by the way, is still soft to the touch, and it has these folks looking over their shoulders. So they realize, okay, if this is his meal, he's probably coming back for it. They set up one of Weber's trail cameras on this deer and go away and wait. And sure enough, he does not disappoint. 6 o'clock that evening, he returns to the kill. This is one of a series of shots that was taken of this lion there. He's checking things out. He's just heard something. He's wondering what it is. So he's out on the alert. In a minute, he's going to find out what it is in this video clip. But by now, he's realized what the situation is. What's happening here is He's decided it's okay. He's hidden. He's gone on to eating, but look in the upper right-hand quadrant of this video. Those lights going through there, that is Jason Weber out there on combine. He's just heard that there's a big snowstorm coming. He wants to get out and get his last harvesting in of the corn by headlight. Now notice the lion's demeanor, okay? Again, this is a lion that is now, some might say savvy, some might say careless, but this may be one of the reasons that this lion was able to make it through this gauntlet, this behavior of being able to gauge when is safe and when is not. Okay, so very next day we get more news, and guess what? The very state that was deciding that they saw this cat on the tree, they were going to shoot it, now they're missing their cat. All told, our lion has now gone 76 linear miles since he surfaced in Champlin 2 weeks earlier, and again, all the indications are he is heading east by southeast. Now, the next day, Christmas Eve, this note comes out, and this one is the note of harbinger, because for those that know anything about the history of these Midwestern lions, this should ring a bell, because this, in fact, is harking back to a mountain lion that did indeed 2 years earlier make his way all the way, just like Walker is doing now. He made his all the way to the city of Chicago, and this was what happened.
It's first on Fox tonight, the cougar hunt with a deadly ending.
For weeks, there have been reports of a big cat in a residential area. Looks like they were right. That is live gunfire, and as you can see, that's where the cougar was hit and killed. Our photographer was rolling when it all happened, and reporter Kelly Craft was standing right next to him. She joins us live from Roscoe Village.
Well, good evening. The cougar was first spotted in this area this morning, and then two people who were looking at this apartment.
People who actually witnessed this line, but here is the result, and this is what we believe is awaiting Walker if he continues his bearings southeast across Wisconsin. So with that bad note, I'd like to take a little detour here and talk about a little bit about this Midwestern habit of gunning down wayward lions. I'd like to contrast this treatment of the Chicago lion here with another lion that wandered into a major city just this past summer. You may have heard about this one, the San Francisco lion. Last summer, this young mountain lion, male mountain lion, wandered into downtown San Francisco. He's there for a little over a day, wandering around. He was being photographed by citizen smartphones, security cameras. So what did they do? Well, the San Francisco Animal Care and Control, they came out, led by a couple of ladies with a net and a cage. They captured the cat. They led him to the hospital for a checkup. When they finished with that, they released him into the wildlands south of the city where they suspected that he had come from. Now, this isn't abnormal. This is what they do for wayward cats in California. This is how they deal with lost cats in California. Here's another example. You've probably heard of this one. This one is P22. He's about 11 years old now. He's a 125-pound male cougar, and for about the last 9 years, he has lived in a park in the middle of 10 million people. That's LA, by the way, in the background. And this guy is a star. He has his own Facebook page. He's been featured in 60 Minutes. Every year, thousands of Angelinos, they turn out for P22 Day, okay? Now, he occasionally leaves. He wanders around, visits the surrounding villas and condos, and then he goes home. No problems. I mean, this is how people have learned to live with mountain lions in a place that is used to living with mountain lions. So what's the difference? San Francisco lion or the Chicago lion? I ask this question of experts every time I come upon this situation. And the difference that I find from most of these people, that they say the difference between this vehemence and this tolerance, it boils down to fear versus familiarity. When you think about it, mountain lions, the Californians never lost their mountain lions. They were never eradicated like those in the Midwest. The people in the Midwest have been living a century now without mountain lions. And, you know, there's been a lot of criticism of the Chicago cops for that shooting of the Chicago cat. Some accused of being trigger happy and whatnot, but I suspect there's something a little bit more than that. I think what is really at issue here is fear. It's fear of the unknown. It's fear of the myth That's part of the culture that they've grown up in. But for whatever reason, our cat, Walker, is unfortunately headed for and not California. He is, by all appearances, heading for the fire squads. And then this happens. Again, unpredictability. For some strange reason, his internal compass shifts, and for the next 2 weeks, he's heading north. 72 miles he goes now. Now he's heading into the north country of Wisconsin. And for those of us who are rooting for him, this is a good direction. Of all his remaining options, this looks like the best one to do. Now he appears again. This is 2 weeks in mid-February, a little town, Cable, Wisconsin. He leaves these tracks on a country road. And along with that, another sample of scat. So we're collecting DNA right and left on this animal. Again, 3 months later, takes another jog, 175 miles east of there. We get another glimpse of our cat. He takes a selfie of himself in the backyard of this home outside the village of Lena, Wisconsin. And again, just 6 days later, 25 miles north, another selfie. Now our lion has entered the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where no lions have been known to live and breed since 1906. So we're clear of humanity, or at least a big bunch of it. So we're thinking good things, but now there's going to come other hurdles in the way. He's now heading for the Canadian border, and it's at the river and the river that separates the two countries, which is the St. Mary's River. This is the St. Mary's River at the crossing. And this is the river goes through a series of rapids at this point. This is a place where even the early explorers and the Indians used to portage their canoes around. It's hard to imagine our lion getting across this, but we think we found out a way that he could have done this. And it's thanks to the efforts of other biologists who've been doing winter surveys over this area. Just downstream of that area that I just showed you, there's this little archipelago of islands that kind of braids that great big giant imposing waterway into these more passable channels that they are found in that other big animals like moose, elk, deer, bear, wolf. They have been documented by winter surveys going back and forth between the international boundary using this very technique. This is how we think that our walker made it into Ontario. I'm going to talk about swimming. People think that cats don't like to swim. Cougars are actually very good swimmers. I'm going to be quiet here and let you listen to this.
That's a big cat. Look at him swim. They can swim great, eh? I didn't know they did that. Oh yeah, that's how they chase deer back and forth. Let's go watch them.
So yeah, Cougars, they've been recorded crossing the Columbia River in Washington, 1.5 miles. They've crossed the Colorado from the north to the south rim of the Grand Canyon. Yeah, they're excellent swimmers. So we're not too surprised at, especially given the fact that already he has crossed the Missouri, he's crossed the Mississippi, the St. Croix. We think he's in Ontario now. Okay. Another black hole, Ontario. He's off the radar now for like 6 months. We don't know where he is. Nobody's heard anything of him. There's no reports that we know of coming from Ontario. We just assume that, he's going through the usual dangers, which at this point would be trappers. And in Algonquin Park, we have wolves. Wolves are not friendly to mountain lions, especially packs of them. But again, we haven't seen this animal for 6 months as we saw him in May of 2010. Now we suspect that Walker is going to come back into the United States at this point. Again, he's going to face a big natural obstacle, another big waterway, the St. Lawrence Seaway, and he's going to do it again, we think, by this system of an archipelago, and this is the Thousand Islands National Park. Again, we don't know quite how he got across, but we do know that by December of 2010, he has re-entered the U.S. of the United States of America, because now we see him and we hear the tale from one Cindy Eggleston. Cindy Eggleston, this is December 16, 2010. Cindy Eggleston, 8 p.m., is washing dishes. She lives in a little town called Lake George on the edge of the Adirondack Mountains. And she's washing dishes and looking out the window, and all of a sudden a motion detecting floodlight in her backyard goes on, and there walking through the floodlight is a mountain lion. Of course, it just so happens that Eggleston's husband is a retired conservation officer for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. The next day he goes out, sure enough, these are cougar tracks all over their lawn. He follows it to a bed where the animal has bedded down for the night. And like a good biologist, he checks in and sure enough, he finds some hairs in that bed, takes the hairs, seals them up, sends them off to this time the state wildlife lab in New York. Because he thinks like many other that he's contacted about this, that this is definitely an escaped pet gone loose. They have no clue that this could be our walker that was making the news about 6 months earlier, okay? So they don't make a big deal of this. They don't tell anybody. This piece of evidence is going to be secret for a little while. Another 6 months elapses until our lion walker shows up again. It's now the 5th of June, it's 2011, 6 months since his last appearance in the Adirondacks. He finally reemerges and with another big statement. He's come to this town of some 60,000 people. It's better known. I like to think of it as a prime habitat for hedge fund billionaires. You may recognize this little scene, but anyway, you're definitely going to recognize the name when we get there. And just to give you a sense for where in the world Greenwich, Connecticut is, that little pinpoint down there, that is Manhattan's Central Park. Straight line distance as the pigeon flies is 23 miles. Our lion shows himself in this little cul-de-sac here. The owner of this house is Brendan Gilsonen. He's an English professor at a prestigious college prep academy. It's called the Brunswick School, which is about a 5-minute walk up that little pathway you see there in the center of the photo, leading away. Gilson and his family, they are relaxing at home on a Sunday afternoon. It's about 6 o'clock. They're watching TV. Gilson gets up. He goes to the sink to get a glass of water or something, looks out the window, and there is this big tawny cat with a long ropey tail strolling through his side yard. He yells, "Mountain lion." And he, his wife, and the 2 sons, they go charging out the front door because they want to have a look at this mountain lion. Well, mountain lion turns and he starts heading out the driveway and he goes right into the road. And almost immediately, he nearly gets creamed by, of all things, an ambulance. Turns around, starts walking straight back to the Gilson family. They retreat, go back inside, and they get the most wonderful experience. I wish I could have been there with them. They get to go, as this lion circles their house, they go from window to window, watching this lion as he just circles his house. He comes within 6 feet of their sliding glass door on his way around the house, just casually inspecting things. Now, he's just about ready to end his round, and he's going to go up that trail, that path that I just showed you. He's about ready to disappear, and all of a sudden Gilson says, "Oh my God, camera." So he runs and he finds this point and shoot, and he holds it above his wife's head and takes a shot through the window, okay? Meanwhile, at the other end of that path is another cul-de-sac just like his. And at that cul-de-sac lives one of his colleagues at campus. His name is Doug Burdette. And what Burdette is doing right there, he's standing in the place where he was standing. He's showing me, this is where I was standing. And where he's pointing is where he met Walker. He hears this commotion of crows, comes out of his house. It's like 20 yards from here to there. And he's standing there. And there's Walker standing in the middle of that stream. He's staring at Walker, Walker staring at him. His wife, Burdette's wife, tosses him a camera, okay? Burdette very dutifully makes sure of this one. He presses the power button and it starts clicking away. Well, after a few minutes, Walker gets bored. He goes underneath that little bridge there, disappears into the willows. He's gone. Burdette turns around and says he's thinking, I have tomorrow's front page photo of the New York Times in my camera. And then he looks and he realizes that in his due diligence, he has not turned it on, but he's off. And there's no evidence. But Gilsonen was a little bit more fortunate, if you want to call this fortune. This is the photo that he took through the window. Now, with a little bit of enhancement, you can begin to imagine, right? Anyway, this photo makes the rounds at the school, and pretty soon the headmaster wants to know a little bit more. He sends the investigators in from the state. First off, they find a huge feline track and a scat. It's 9 inches long. It's coarsely woven with deer hair. Just for comparison's sake, they take a big black dog and they put him up against that tree right there, just for comparison's sake to the photograph. And that dog is dwarfed. Immediately, the Brunswick school goes into lockdown. Its hiking trails are posted. That night, the Greenwich Time that breaks the news, there's this large cat prowling King Street. Soon after, the American Cancer Society, this is precious. The American Cancer Society, they abruptly cancel this charity walk that they were going to have on campus that Friday, and they hurriedly move it to another town 10 miles down the way to an indoor gymnasium. Okay, CBS, Fox News, Associated Press, they're all picking up the story. There's a mountain lion in Greenwich, Connecticut, for God's sakes. Greenwich Mountain Lion opens up a Facebook page, Twitter account, friends and followers flocking in by the minute. Phones start ringing at the Greenwich Conservation Commission. What do I do? Can I go jogging? What do I do with my pet? What do I do if I see this animal? And suddenly everybody is seeing cougars behind every bush, every tree. There must be 1,000 cougars now in Greenwich, Connecticut. But again, our walker is long gone. Okay, he's leaving the commotion behind because he's got other things to do. He's heading east. Now, this is speculation again, but here's a guess at what he did next. We think that those two little pinpoints there, those are the residences of Eagleson and Doug Burdette. We think by nightfall, he went back out again, crossed that same road that he almost got hit on, went across the Fairview Country Club and then the golf course there. He went through this verdant forest, which is filled with private castles and swimming pools and tennis courts and whatnot, finally to the shoulders of the Merrick Parkway. Now, the Merrick Parkway is a very famous road. You may have driven on it a few times yourself, built in the 1930s. It was an artistic alternative to US Route 1 at the time, which even then was becoming, this daily grind of the commuter. So one of the signature features of the Merrick Parkway is the park itself. And on either side, there's like 300 feet of bog and meadow and plantings. It's this green space. It's become like this demilitarized haven for wildlife. You've got everything in there: possums, raccoons, coyotes, bobcats, and a lot of deer. We don't know for sure if Walker used this route, but it seems logical. It would have been his easiest passage to this very, very busy part of America. And it is the same road that he ended up on 5 nights later. We do know that somehow he tiptoed his way over the next 5 days, probably by night, about 35 miles up the road, through all these different sleeping citizenries. He crosses the Housatonic River there. The Merrick Parkway turns into the Wilbur Cross Parkway, which is its northeastern extension, to arrive at this point. It's shortly after midnight on June 11. I'll give you a closer look at where he ends up. So he crosses the Housatonic River into the township of Milford, and he picks up the parkway. And shortly after midnight, June 11, 2011, he comes to this stretch of road. And he's going to do now, Walker's going to do what he's done hundreds of times in his crossing of this country. He's going to cross the road. Okay, so he's coming from left to right there, southbound to northbound lanes. There's a little rocky outcrop there, which I'm guessing he kind of slid down that. And at this point, it's really dark. There's not many cars on the road. He slips without problem past the southbound lanes, through the median, through the guardrail, and then steps into the northbound lane and into the headlights of an SUV going 65 miles per hour. The driver notices him at the last instant. She has no time to brake. Walker realizes he's not going to make it. He braces for the impact. His claws are gripping the asphalt. The driver feels the heavy thud of something hitting her left front fender, and she pulls over with her car smoking into the breakdown lane and dials 911. And this is always a tough picture for me, even now. After nearly 2 years on the run, Walker's journey is over, but the bright side is that the story is just beginning. Yes, there's a real mountain lion. He's lying dead on the shoulder of a highway in southwest Connecticut. The most immediate question is, where did he come from? The chief suspicions, as usual, are captivity. This cat must be somebody's pet gone loose. They bring in the experts. June 20th, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the veterinary forensic veterinarian comes all the way from Oregon, performs a necropsy on our lion, looking for more clues to his origins. First impressions, this lion, and everyone again is thinking this must be somebody's pet. But the first impression, this animal, he's muscular, he's lean, he's athletic. He weighs 140 pounds. There's no tattoos on his lips, no indications of a missing collar. His teeth, they show no chips or cracks as an animal that might have been chewing on the bars of a cage. His claws remain intact. A lot of times when people keep these animals for pets, they take their claws. His foot pads, there's no unusual wear like that of an animal that's been pacing his lifetime in a concrete runway. They look in his stomach, he's got porcupine quills. This is one of the favorite foods of mountain lions, by the way. This is not exactly the commercial chow of a cage-fed cat, okay? So now they're really intrigued. They take a plug of flesh from this cat's tongue and a tooth, package it up, send it out again to our Missoula lab for DNA analysis. Nearly 3 weeks later, the answer comes back with thunder. And all those plugs of hair and scat, all those genetic fingerprints gathered in this crossing now reveal the most historic journey ever taken by a wild creature of such size as Walker. The facts are he is a young male. He's no more than 3 years old. He originated from the Black Hills of South Dakota. And over the course of 2 years, he was detected in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, New York, and Connecticut. He left numerous pictures and 6 samples of his DNA as proof. In tribute to this cat, on July 26th, the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection, they hold a press conference to announce the identity of what they're calling the Milford Lion. The details are astounding. The implications are sweeping. Walker has basically dismantled all the arguments of the doomsayers who tell us that these lions are a menace to society. He has undoubtedly passed by uncounted hundreds of barnyards and pastures and corrals with easy meat offerings in every one of them. He has toured towns of tens of thousands, towns of millions, with so many of us two-legged enticements. And in every case, he has walked on. The thing is, he didn't come all this way to do any of us any harm. He came looking for 2 things that should ring familiar with all of us. He came looking for a hospitable place to live and a mate. I have to leave you with one proposal that is inspired by this cat Walker. I would like to propose a different ending for any of his would-be successor. I would like to propose that the next time an intrepid young explorer like Walker sets off across the heartland, that instead of chasing him down and shooting him, why not load him into a nice, soft, dark bed, back of a covered pickup truck, and do the neighborly thing and give him a lift the rest of the way? Why not take him to any number of places, the great North Woods of Maine, the Catskills, the Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, the Great Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, and let him go? Why not? Oh, and by the way, why not have 3 or 4 nice young lady lions waiting for him there when he gets there? That's my proposal. I would like to end here with a few words of my favorite words that I've seen written about the mountain lion by the poet and writer D.H. Lawrence. And that will do it. Thank you very much. My understanding is that we will have some time for questions, or maybe not. I guess
Yes, yes, we do.
Okay, well then I'm gonna, if you want to read more about Walker, more details of the story, you can always find his book on my website. And if you want to chime in now on some of the Q&A, here's some instructions for you all that I'm supposed to show with you for you.
Correct. Yes,
Zoomers up there.
there's
Okay.
several ways you can ask questions to Will. You can click the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and then we will, Tim will unmute you, and you'll be able to ask your question verbally, or you can also, oh, I'm sorry, that's raise your hand, and we'll unmute you and call on you so you can ask a question, or type yours into the Q&A part. So if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the Q&A or raise your hand. Let's see if I can help with this too. Do you have questions? Let's see. I haven't done this part. Tim, are you here to, do we have any questions on the raise your hand part?
Nope, not yet.
Okay. All right. Okay. Oh, here's a question from Caroline Griffin. Can you tell us more about the mountain lions in Florida, Will?
Yeah, I actually can tell you a little bit more about the mountain lions in Florida. I live in Fort Myers. Thank you, Caroline. Good friend of mine. I live about 5 miles from the edge of Florida panther habitat. I live in Fort Myers. And right now we figure there's somewhere around 150, 200 Florida panthers in the state. Now, the big issue with these animals is that they are rapidly losing their habitat to development. I mean, they're supposed to be protected by the Endangered Species Act because they are this isolated little population, but they're still getting hammered by developers. There just doesn't seem to be any stopping them, the political machine that is mowing over them. So they're in dire straits. But the thing is that we know there is an escape, and that escape is basically heading north. What the problem has been so far is that most of these lions are bottled up beneath this river called the Caloosahatchee, which runs empties right out in Fort Myers, as it turns out. But this has been sort of a barrier for many, many years for female mountain lions. The males will cross at the females for some reason, until recently never did that. I say recently, just a year or so ago, we had 1 or 2 females that actually went across, and we have pictures of them with kittens. So this is great news, but unfortunately we don't, that was a couple of years ago, we don't have any indication that those kittens survived or that those kittens themselves are reproducing. What needs to happen is they need help. They need help getting across, because once they get across that river, once they get into northern Florida, into the Panhandle, once they get into the Appalachians, it's game on. They can repopulate the East pretty much that way. But so far it's been a political hot potato to actually think of taking them and moving them across this canal. Yeah, so it's in one sense, it's an honor to be living this close to the Florida panther, but the other thing is that they're getting slaughtered by cars. There's supposed to be speed limits for these animals, and people ignore them. They kill, I don't know, several dozen of them every year. One of the major sources of fatalities. It's just a really dangerous place anymore for an animal the size of the Florida panther to live. And my call, and many of my colleagues are out there saying the same thing. We need to help these animals get north.
Okay, thank you. Cindy has a question. Have there been other mountain lion sightings in the East since Walker?
Yes, not that far east. He's still the record holder but yeah, we continue to get sightings in the East. The same thing happening. These adventurers like Walker are coming from these satellite populations, in particular the Black Hills. But again, they're disappearing. They get so far, and then all of a sudden the sightings vanish. The thing we do not have yet, this is the thing we keep hoping for, but it's such a long shot, is reproduction. What's got to happen is the females got to get across, and females are not apt to go as far as males are. And so that's the problem. All these males are coming this way. They're not finding what they're looking for. And eventually something happens to them. They get shot, they get run over, they disappear, they're vanished.
Okay, Steve Marking writes, wonderful. I agree, Steve, and thanks again, Will. It's been great to hear this magnificent story of this beautiful animal.
Great,
so Steve asks, have there been any sightings since 2009 in the upper Midwest, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa? And he says, thank you.
Yeah, in fact, Minnesota just had, I think 15 sightings last year. Now, that doesn't mean that there's 15 mountain lions in Minnesota. It means that there was 15 sightings or positive identifications. It could have been one animal like this one. This is the Walker is a good example. You know, he left, 6 different pieces of DNA and however many sightings. You would have thought there was 20 cougars. It was all one. Okay. So the same thing is happening in Minnesota. We don't know how many mountain lions there are, but we know they're still filtering in. And last year, 2020 was a banner year for sightings. There was like 15 of them. So yeah.
Okay, thanks. Lots of questions here. Lori Bruno, is there any place where they are trying to reestablish mountain lions?
That's the problem. No, I mean there's, and gosh, I'm blanking on this. There is one place where they're trying to help them get from one place to another. And this is something I wish I'd had time during the presentation, but they are building an overpass for the LA Cougars, the ones that live in the Santa Monica Mountains, which are an endangered population. There's only like 10 or 12 of them. And they're hemmed in by these heinous 8-lane freeways, the 405 and the Hollywood Expressway. They can't get out without getting smashed, okay? But they're building this elaborate, supposed to be the biggest one in the world, this wildlife overpass, and it's through donations. They're going to build this. That's going to allow those populations, north and south of the Santa Monica Mountains, to cross over and to provide new genetic material. So in that sense, yeah, we're helping mountain lions. But I don't know of any cases where we're actually moving mountain lions is the kind of thing that I'm suggesting, which is, is just blasphemy in wildlife management. But that would be an easy thing to do, and it'd be a simple thing to do. But there's one thing where, we can just, if we help them along, they will do the heavy lifting. Walker's another example of this. Think about how far these animals, what they can endure on their own if we just give them a little bit of a hand. There are females now trying to make little small steps into the prairie. But again, they're met with so much resistance that the idea of them actually getting together with a male, having kittens, and surviving to the next generation so far is just, it's going to take so many generations that we have.
Okay, lots of more questions. So Tom writes, Will, you mentioned the Great Smoky Mountains as one potential drop-off location. Are there any known population there or along the Appalachian Trail as an example?
That's, I raised that because there could be. I mean, this is great habitat. It's chock full of deer. It's full of mountains, yeah, but no, there isn't. That's the thing. People keep saying they see, if you listen to the web chats and whatnot, there's thousands of mountain lions living in the east. They're breeding and they're all over the place and whatnot. But the fact is they're not. I mean, we've shown, and Walker is another great example of this. When there is a mountain lion in your midst, you will know about it eventually. All right. They leave signs. They're not vampires, they leave tracks. You can actually, when you take a picture of them, you can actually see them. And with all these trail cameras out there, by now, if there were mountain lions living in any of these places, we would know about it because we're seeing everything else on these trail cams but mountain lions. So all we are seeing now is the stray animal that's either let loose, it's a captive animal, or one of these heroes like Walker, who makes it that far but never finds what he's looking for and just vanishes. So no, there isn't. Unfortunately, there aren't any populations in the Appalachians yet.
I did that. Okay, Carol Carter. Hi, Carol. I've heard of mountain lions attacking people in, I think, Boulder, Colorado, and someplace in California. Is this true? If so, how frequently does it happen? And I missed the one before that. I'll come back to that.
Yeah, and I'm probably one of the only people who doesn't make a big deal about mountain lion attacks because I think that's my fellow journalists. That's what they gravitate to because that's what people want to hear about. And unfortunately, the attack record of mountain lions is really, really boring. I think they've killed, I think the record is, and again, I've stopped even looking at this because it's so minuscule. The possibility, the probability of getting hurt or killed by a cougar is just way, way up there. I think 20, 25 over the last century or so. I mean, it's now about 1 out of every decade, I think, on average, somebody gets killed by a mountain lion. Boulder, I don't know of anybody getting killed there. There's been a lot of talk that they should be doing more damage there, just because there's a big deer population around Boulder, right? And so there's a lot of mountain lions who are living right on the edge of Boulder. They come into town sometimes, you know, they are seen very often in Boulder, but and there are some, you know, there are some scrapes, there are some aggressive mountain lions out there, but in terms of deaths, no. There have been deaths in California, I should say that. There have been some attacks in recent years, but again, they come in these little blips and then they go off the radar for a long time. So being attacked by the mountain lion is one of the last things on earth that you could imagine being killed by.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ron Davies, nice to have you with us, Ron. What appears to drive the fear about living in proximity to cougars? Is there any evidence to show they negatively impact their human neighbors?
Yeah, they do. To be honest, I mean, you know, there are people who raise livestock, who raise, especially in California, there's a situation, they have a lot of hobby livestock. You know, they raise llamas or, you know, maybe goat farmers or something like that, where you have to take precautions, because if you have these animals out in the open, a cougar finds a llama or an alpaca or, you know, a goat, it's kind of easy pickings. So yeah, and there are groups that are working to help folks like that who are living on the interface, to help them take better care of their livestock. And, you know, I'll mention the Mountain Lion Foundation is one that goes out there and it gives advice on how to, you know, protect yourself against these. But again, these incidences are far and few and far between. This is not the norm. You know, mountain lions just generally don't make a habit of making a nuisance of themselves, but in places where they do, we have methods, non-lethal methods of where we can handle these animals.
Okay, thank you. Kathy asks, what are the similarities and differences of dealing with wolves, if you know of any, compared to the mountain lion?
In dealing with wolves, well, I will tell you the similarities, and this is where my bias comes in, but I mean, the science is out there that the similarities in dealing with these animals, and what we've learned from the science is that the last thing you want to do, if you're not having troubles with wolves or with cougars, mountain lions or whatever, the last thing you want to do is start shooting them up. You know, it's like a lot of the game agencies, they seem to think that if they just shoot more wolves, if they just kill more mountain lions, they're going to solve their problems. And in fact, they are exacerbating their problems, because what they find is that when you disrupt these very finely tuned, structured societies, you create juvenile delinquents. You create animals who are, you know, dispersing. You create orphans. You create animals that are basically desperate. And these are the animals, young animals, orphaned animals. These are the animals that get into trouble. It happens with mountain lions. It happens with wolves, whereby if you bother a situation that isn't causing you any harm, you're very likely to end up with problems. And so there's a similarity. The difference is, yeah, I mean, you were talking about a lone predator. Most mountain lions, you know, they act alone or for the benefit of their kittens. But in wolves, you're dealing with a pack, you know, and so there are just different rules for dealing with them. One of the things that you can do to deter wolves, for example, around a flock of sheep, this thing called fladery. You just basically hang these little like nylon flags, you know, on a rope around, make a corral of it, and just the movement of it, it freaks the wolves out, and they treat it like an electric fence. It's the coolest thing. Another thing you can do with wolves is just basically have somebody out there with your flock. You can use dogs. Dogs have been proven to be really good deterrents for wolves and mountain lions, protecting sheep. There's all sorts of non-lethal ways of handling these animals. But again, they're different species. They have different attack methods. And so, yeah, I'll leave it at that. But there are differences.
Okay, thank you. Here's another one. Hey, Will, John Nebraska in the Lower Shenandoah Valley. Great
Hey, John.
presentation.
Hey.
We have constant citizen reports of lion sightings in the Blue Ridge in Shenandoah National Park in the Alleghenies of West Virginia, and we wish they were true, but no firm evidence yet. Most are probably bobcats, but how many pet lions are out there? Is having a mountain lion as a pet really even legal?
Yeah, we don't know how many pet lions are out there. Hi, John. We don't know how many pet lions are out there because but some states allow pet lions, some states don't. And of course, a lot of people keep them in basements. You know, it used to be that it was kind of a status symbol to have a mountain lion in your basement. So we really don't know because it's unregulated in many places. But there's a lot of them. I think the figures I've seen thrown out are thousands. There are thousands of captive mountain lions in this country. As for all the sightings, you know, we've been, the Cougar Rewilding Foundation, they started off kind of following all of these sightings and wanting to document the fact that, yes, there is these functioning populations in the East. What they came to after years and years of following these leads is that, no, they're not there. And so, again, there's the possibility, and Walker has shown us, is never say never. You know, these things do happen. So you have to always respect somebody who comes to you and says, I just saw a mountain lion. On the other hand, like 99% of them are bogus. And there's also another class of citizen out there who likes to play hoaxes, you know, who likes to, you know, give you a picture of a mountain lion, says, here's a, and they've got a picture of a mountain lion from Arizona, and they're putting it and labeling it someplace in the Appalachians, for example. I mean, this sort of nonsense goes on, and the internet is rife with hoaxes. And so it's really hard. And I really feel sorry for the game agents that have to field all of these calls that say, you know, the folks that handle the Walker's carcass in Connecticut say they get 150 calls. This is in Connecticut. They get 150 calls every month, you know, on supposed mountain lions. And they've just learned that all they have to do is, you know, if they get a picture, they put it on, you know, they put it up on Google, and there's search engines. You can immediately tell where that picture came from. Almost invariably, these sightings, if you will, are hoaxes coming from somewhere else. So I wish, but what we need to get female mountain lions out there. There could be males wandering around, but there's just no evidence of any breeding.
All right, Abigail and Ella Mankerson ask, do you think that there will be more mountain lions in the east of the U.S.? And if so, do you think there is hope for them to relocate north U.S.?
Well, the hope again is, you know, there's some people who say, well, let them come on their own. You know, let examples like Walker show the way. But the problem is, as I've stated, as you need to bring the females along too. You need to have something for them here when they get there. But there's plenty of habitat. I mean, bless his soul, John Landry, who just recently passed away, has done studies. You know, in the Adirondacks, he determined, you know, he compared this to the Black Hills. He did a lot of research on, you know, how many deer they have and how much area they have. 350 mountain lions, he believes, could live in Adirondack Park alone, you know. And that's not including, you know, if you look through New England, there's huge areas of forested areas with lots and lots of deer. As I mentioned, this is a big deer problem. Plenty of food, plenty of cover. There's no reason they shouldn't be here except for us.
All right. Hello, Melissa Olson, who lives in northern Minnesota. I'll just let you know, Will, if a mountain lion has been spotted in my area, Pequot Lakes, is it safe to say they are just moving through? How long do they stick in an area?
Yeah, it is probably pretty safe to say they're just moving through. Although we have had cases, I think just across the Canadian border, we had a case where this lion was hanging out in it was a refuge of sort. I'm hazy on the details again, but this lion was being seen by the refuge staff for some weeks. Same thing has happened, I think, in Oklahoma, where they've seen in the certain areas, they've seen the same cat. Seems to be over weeks, but for the most part, what we have are these transient males like Walker that are coming through, and they're just, again, they're looking. They are prospecting. They're looking for a place to settle down. They're looking for a female, and if they don't find it, they keep moving on. And that's another point about what Walker does. You know, people say, well, there's mountain lions here. Well, if there was female mountain lions, don't you think Walker would have stayed somewhere? I mean, these animals are trained to seek out the other sex, right? He was basically a bloodhound traversing this country and telling us that, sorry, folks, there's no females here. So in answer to your question, I would say, yeah, I think that the most logical answer, if you see a mountain lion in northern Minnesota, that animal is just passing.
All right, we have another question here from Mike and Leah Newman in Wisconsin. When the line went north from down to Wisconsin on its way to Cable, did it go close to Bruce, Wisconsin? One of our sons came back from a bike ride and he said he had seen a lion cross the road in front of him. Of course, all those years ago, we didn't believe him. And so that's, about, they're about an hour, an hour and a quarter apart there. Well, the Cable is about an hour and a quarter north of.
It's Bruce.
Bruce, yeah, Bruce. Yep, Bruce is an hour and a quarter south, pretty much of Cable.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that, but it could be if the timing is right. This happened in February of 2010, when that animal was coming through. I mean, you might want to have a talk. If it happened then, it very well could have been. Again, never say never. Of course. Wisconsin has its share of lions coming through there too. So it just raises the question, you can never just say, just write them all off as somebody seeing things, which is cool.
Nice compliment from Heather W. Thank you. Great story, just fascinating. Jess C., thank you for the great presentation. I'm the Wisconsin DNR biologist that you worked with on the Downsville sighting and footage. This brings back a lot of great memories. Sorry, I got to move it down again. Tim and I are working in tandem. This brings back a lot of great memories following this cat. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Yeah. For me as well, Jess, it brings back a lot of fond memories. Cliff, are Cougars and Panthers related?
Yep. I'm sorry I slipped right over that one, but they're the same animal. The Florida panther is where most people refer to panthers in terms of the Florida panther. It's been determined it's the same species. I mean, people that know the panther, they can tell Florida panther from a Western panther, but they're basically the same animal. Some animals, different regional variations, are a little bit smaller. They may have a little bit different shaped snout, or they may be a different color. But they're all the same species.
All right. Tom asks, any talks of repopulating certain areas similar to what they have done with the wolves?
Yeah, I wish. Again, that's what the Cougar champions are after, is to make something happen, like they did with the wolves of Yellowstone and Idaho when they brought them in 1995 and 1996. Those are great examples of what you can do if you put a lot of effort, if you get the community behind you. It takes a lot of work. It was a lot of political maneuvering to make that happen. But by comparison, mountain lions are easy compared to wolves. I mean, they're just, they just don't seem to cause the amount of ire, the amount of troubles that wolves potentially do. And so it seems to me, politically speaking, it ought to be a lot easier just to bring mountain lions in. But again, this is not welcome news for a lot of the game agencies, which again a lot of them are beholden to deer hunters, and deer hunters don't want to share their sport. So.
All right. Hello, Leanne Landstrom. You're asking, why east? Are there sightings or proof that some dispersers choose to go north or west into the Rockies?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
First she wants to know why east, and then she wants to know, are there sightings or proof that some dispersers choose to go north or west into the Rockies?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I didn't.
That's okay, yeah. I did a bad job reading, sorry.
No, but yes, why east? A good question. I mean, I don't know if it's, they flip a coin or whatnot, but most of the animals that they were radio tracking in the Black Hills, they indeed did that. They went west where they should have gone back into the Rockies. Some of them went north, some went into Canada, but it's the rare ones again that just struck out east that make for the most interesting story, particularly the one of Walker. So yeah, those are the minority, the ones that did like Walker did and went straight east. The other ones have, I don't know, maybe better sense about them, but most of them do head west into the mountains.
Okay, it's 8:30, but we have a handful more questions. Are you willing to hang on for a little bit more?
Sure. No, I'm happy that people are curious. This is great.
Tim, does anybody have their hand up? I haven't done a webinar this style, so I'm not sure if there'd be a number there. No? Okay. Are you hanging on a little longer too? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks. Kim Cabrera, do you have any ideas about how to mitigate the cougar hysteria that leads them to being shot on sight? How can we ensure that they will have safe passage through our cities without being shot?
Well, I started to allude to that with my example of the California cats. And it seems to be that familiarity is key. It takes time for people to get used to this idea of this 150-pound animal, that can kill a 600-pound elk wandering around in your city. And as I tried to explain there with, for example, the Chicago cougar, I don't think those cops were necessarily trigger happy. I think what was going on there was they didn't know cougar biology. Now, one of the great things that one of the colleagues that I worked with on this story, Jay Titchendorf, he's a houndsman. He has experience trapping and handling cougars, mountain lions. And what he did, this was before the Chicago cougar hit town there. He went around to a lot of these Midwestern states and went to their game agencies and says, look, I've got this course. I could teach you a first responder course on how your game agents, your cops and whatnot can respond when this very eventuality comes. When the cougar comes to town, here's what you do. And California again has led the way. They've shown that you don't need to come with the guns blazing every time this animal comes to town, because again, they're not there to hurt people. So familiarity is key. You need to, and sometimes it just takes time. Sometimes it's just a matter of, generation after generation, the long haul. You finally realize, hey, nothing's happening. These animals are over. Time being with these animals, and that may be you can draw all sorts of conclusions and analogies to what's going on in our own human culture around it. It's you find that if you get to know somebody, if you know only somebody of what their ideals are, what their ideas are, it's a whole lot different when you sit down and actually talk with these people and get familiar with who they really are. You find out that you've got a lot in common. And I think the same thing goes for big predators. When you've actually lived with these animals in close proximity, like the Californians have from the get-go, they're in all of their parks. They're denning within sight of the suburbs there. And this is happening in cities all over the West, where they're just realizing, hey, it's not a big deal. You take extra precautions. You take care of your pets like you should. You keep your cats and your dogs inside, or you walk with them at certain hours of the day. It's just a slight adjustment, but it's getting to know each other a little better. And these things are possible.
All right. Jim Mundy has a question and a comment. I'll read his comment first. He said, I have read your book, Outstanding Presentation. And then he has a question. Are M. LaRue, CougarNet, and other Easterners developing plans to educate east of the Rockies?
I don't know. Thank you, Jim. Good to hear from you. I don't know. The CougarNet, I've been kind of poking in to see where they're at, and maybe they're out there, and I'd like to hear from Michelle. But it just seems to me like the last time I was on their website, they weren't keeping up with the cougar sightings, but maybe I'm looking at the wrong page. But I don't know that any education programs for Eastern cats. Let me mention one though, Clendoggy. It's a Facebook page. It's an offshoot of the Cougar Rewilding Group. It's run by one of my former colleagues, Helen McGinnis. It's a great place to keep up on what's happening with the Eastern cougar and the national scale too, but she does a really good job of collating all these different reports of cougars here and there, in particular because she's got a lot of experience. She lives in West Virginia, got a lot of experience with Eastern cougars in sightings and reports and whatnot. So if you want to learn more about them, I would go to this place. It's Clendoggy, K-L-A-N, Clan D-A-G-I, and it's on Facebook.
Okay, Kim Cabrera writes a comment, and I'm not sure if well, I'll just read it. The Liberty Canyon overpass through Save LA Cougars.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. That's the one I was mentioning. That's supposed to be a world beater. I mean, that's a huge thing, and they've already raised, like, last I checked it was like 18 million towards this overpass. But that is supposed to be the lifeline for that very small population of Santa Monica Cougars, which, by the way, is where P22 is suspected of having come from. So yeah, it's a really hazardous place to be a Cougar, and they're trying to give them a lifeline, which is, kudos to those folks out there.
Okay, Jim Laro says, just wanted to thank you for the story and your insights. Thanks for your nice comments, Jim.
Thank you.
And then there's an anonymous attendee that wrote, can you speak to the population dynamics of the black morph in Florida? Is that a subspecies?
Well, I'm guessing that you're thinking there, as far as we know, there is no black morph of the panther, the cougar, mountain lion, any of those things. In fact, that's one of the real interesting phenomena of cougar sightings is that many of them, a large percentage of them, the ones that are reported, are black. People are always saying they see black cougars, but in fact, there are none known to science. You would think that after all these years, we would have one killed on a road somewhere, caught in a trap, or shot, or captured in one of these trail cams, but there just isn't any evidence of the black morph of the mountain lion. So or the panther, if you have such a thing, if you have a picture, by all means, let's see it, because to my knowledge, there isn't any such thing.
Okay, we have 2 more written in questions, but we also have a hand raised. So I'm going to have Tim go ahead and unmute the person that has their hand raised, then we'll come back to these other 2.
Yeah, it's Anita Jader. Anita, your line is open. You may need to unmute, and then you can ask your question.
Hi, Anita. Welcome.
Hey, hi. I didn't have a question. I don't know how I must have bumped something. But I'm glad I get to say thank you, because it was fabulous.
Thank you.
Anita is one of our team that helped plan this event.
Well, thank you. Yeah, good to meet you.
I was really excited to hear you.
Yeah, great. Good to hear. Thank you.
All right. Well, good. It's nice to hear someone say thank you besides me. So that was good. That was good, Anita. So Lori M. Bloom writes, is preserving river corridor habitat important for mountain lion and other wildlife movement?
Yeah, certainly in the Midwest it is, because as you saw in one of those slides that I showed of Walker's first steps into the South Dakota prairie, the river corridors are one of the main avenues for a lot of these animals getting out of South Dakota. In fact, the Missouri River is a very popular means for transient animals like Walker. And so, yes, these river corridors, not only they provide cover for a cougar in a very dangerous land, lots of prey, right? These are places where it's easy to find deer and whatnot. So absolutely, in the Midwest, where water is in such short supply, the waterways are primo.
All right, Steve Marking, he says, so interesting. When you compare the statistics of deaths from car accidents due to deer, long-term health effects of Lyme disease, and deer's damage to our native forest to the small amount of problems caused by mountain lions, we need a deer predator.
Yeah, we do. And maybe not just a deer predator. I mean, you want to open it up. When we settled this country, when we took over this country, we had wolves, we had bears, we had mountain lions everywhere. And, that's one of the things that science is showing us. When you do away with these animals, you really upset the balance that's out there. You really can do a number on native ecosystems. And so, yeah, bring back the lions, bring back the wolves. I don't know what more I can say is that, it is the goal, I think, of a lot of restoration ecologists that bringing the predators back is every bit as important as growing new forests, because they in fact help forests grow. You know, these are one of the components of a healthy ecosystem, and to say that you're setting aside a preserve and you don't have one of its main components in there, its ecological components, there's a lot of people now that are beginning to question that. Have you really restored this area, this bit of nature, if you will?
Okay, Tim, are there any other hands up?
Nope.
Okay, so the last is a comment from Cabrera. I apologize. I read your book and loved it. Just wanted to say thanks for that too. So if you want to remind people, I believe your books are available on Kindle.
Yep.
Yep, and you can go to Will's website. He has a lot of great information there. And I want to thank you once again, Will. It's a fascinating presentation, and we were really excited. There's been a few silver linings in these years, and with COVID, and one of them is being able to reach out to Florida and have a speaker for our environmental forum from far away.
Silver linings, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So please join us at Waterfest and join us for our future environmental forums and other programs. Simba, did you want to say anything?
I wanted to say thank you, Will, and thank you, Dana, and thank you, Environmental Forum team, and thanks to all the attendees.
And thank you, Tim. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks very much, and have a good evening, everyone.
All righty. Thanks and bye.